This is a video of the pages of an instructional manual with materials list for the Espanola Valley area of New Mexico. Of course, the material list would be the same for anywhere where this type of Willett solar collector is built. We did include prices for the materials for this particular collector seen here and on the front of the manual. This is Frutoso Martinez's home, just north of the Ranchitos post office in Espanola. Working really well, heating up the crawl space. You can see there where the access was to get in and insulate the crawl space, and then get the hot and the cold pipes in from the collector. Back inside here where the fan is, there are also probes, a probe going into the collector and one into the crawl space, so that it turns on and off automatically. So this is just an introduction to building your own solar collector. Here we have the first step of locating a used patio glass door. You don't want low E collector, because that means poor light transmission, so no low E glass. Only one pane of glass is all you need. Plan to install your collector vertically, and there it gives you information on how to plan for layout for ductwork and fan. And I can go back through the page here so that let's start back here. If you wanted to pause and actually read the manual, then you'll be able to do so at any point. So I'll go ahead and scan it so that if you wish to pause it at some point to read it, you can. We'll go on to page 2. Here it mentions that installing the collector vertically at 90 degrees to the ground, you will have no problems in the summer. The collector will not even turn on in the summer due to the angle of the sun at that time of year. This is about the thermostat. If you live in a trailer, you'll want the crawl space area insulated, and here's how we recommend doing it: with a radiant barrier. One brand is Prodex. Very inexpensive way to keep your radiant heat in. Up to 97% of the radiant heat is reflected back by that foil, reflective foil. Here's the tools and materials needed. And then here's a suggestion for something to do before installing the duct board in the collector. Coat the fiberglass completely with high temperature caulk so that the fibers don't get into the airstream. And here's something to do at least an hour ahead of installing the collector. It's to spray the actual absorber with flat black paint, and we recommend like a black engine paint that can take high temperatures. Here it's suggesting the different steps to actually start building your collector. Everything is measured to the size of the glass, so that the glass stays inside the perimeter of the collector about 1/2 inch all the way around. Here's for cutting out the holes for the hot and the cold air ductwork, putting in the channel track to direct the air, put in rigid ductboard insulation, cut holes through the ductboard, insulate the inside edges of the channel track frame. Figure 7 up ahead here illustrates how to prepare 2 6-inch stovepipes to serve as sleeves for the hot and cold air stovepipes. And then you can install your absorber plate support channel. Create baffles. Drill a hole for the thermoprobe that'll go into the air channel. Installing the absorber plate itself. A bead of caulk should be placed on the absorber plate support channel around the inside perimeter before installing the plate itself. And if you mark carefully where the center baffle runs below the plate, you'll know exactly where to screw to hold the plate firmly to the baffle. Here's how to wire up the blower, inserting the tube in the hole for the thermoprobe. The thermostat will now kick the blower on automatically every time the air in the collector reaches your set temperature. And that's really the instructions for building the collector. And back here we have some illustrations and also the actual materials list. And we have here where, for example, we picked up certain materials like at Lowe's or in Taos Cisneros sheet metal shop, which came up with the ductboard and the absorber plate. Now let's all back off here so you can see the whole page. And of course these prices will change from place to place. Perimeter channel track, galvalume. We got our galvalume from San Luis Valley Building Components. Here's Myers Steel in Espanola. Cooks. These folks helped us, kept in stock what we needed for solar collectors. Screws. The patio glass door insert we actually got at the Habitat Restore. Matt's glass has some and R&E glass also. Sometimes they just give them away. Patio glass door inserts are made by the thousands and are quite low cost. Here's where to get the Granger blower, which runs around $150. Let's see where that, yeah, right there. The total cost here for the collector materials is given. Now let's take a look at this last page here, which is a few more notes about the material list and some mistakes to avoid when building your own solar collector. avoiding the sheet metal shop is it's very difficult to build a collector without at least one trip to the sheet metal shop. Not oiling the boiler is a good thing to point out. It's important that you oil it once or twice a year. Be sure to locate the blower so it's easy enough to accomplish this. And let's see what our last few pages are, even though they're upside down. This is about heat storage, using a rock storage bin, for example, to store heat. It's not recommended. There are many common mistakes. Suitable rocks mostly give off radon, and there's also sometimes moisture problems. Here's for information on designing a collector with more than one glass panel and or larger absorber plate dimensions. What we're recommending is to contact the HeartMind Alliance at gmail.com. There's a illustration showing hot air being moved to the north end underneath the floor, with the cool air returning to the collector from ground level. So it just gets hotter and hotter during the day, turning the floor into a radiant heat surface. Here's basic wiring details for a blower. Cutting and assembling the perimeter track. You don't want to have any gaps at the corners of the collector, so have the overlaps be out here and simply cut notches out of this so that it can be airtight in the corners. Here's an example of that, cutting out the notch to create the airtight corner. Well, I got my kitty cat here checking out the work. Let's see if we can get the last few pages here, if she'll allow. Here you can see assembling the perimeter of the collector. And that overlap I mentioned should occur here, not at the corners. Here's an example of airflow through a collector. And then the last page here of this manual is showing the absorber plate supports and air baffles, and making the stovepipe sleeves, and like putting the tabs there, and then you can actually screw down through the fiberglass insulation and into the plywood below. Sealing the tempered glass to the front of the collector. Very important to get caulk in there, using perhaps a wedge to hold the glass up until you can get the caulk in as you go all the way around the perimeter. You don't want any dust getting into the area between the glass and the absorber plate.